Hi everyone, Courtney Gruenholz back here again with another episode from my book Nook. Alright, so last video I talked about my Stephen King and horror fiction collection that I have back here in my little nook. Now it's time to tackle the next shelf and my next collection of books that I have. First I have two other little Funkos that are down here on my shelf. I have General Leia Organa from Star Wars The Force Awakens. I always wanted to try to find a Princess Leia Funko because she's my favorite character from Star Wars, and around the time when The Force Awakens came out, Carrie Fisher passed away. So when me and my husband were out at FYE, I got this General Leia Funko because I could never find a Princess Leia one, and then of course they put out Princess Leia ones, but wouldn't you much rather have Leia as a general than as a princess? Because I do have the books that are themed with it, and I do like the movies. It's also kind of odd because this shelf up here is Stephen King, and this is Edward Cullen from the Twilight saga. So, yes, I am a Twihard. Probably not a very, large one, but I do like the movies. I didn't actually see Twilight, the first movie, when it came out. I saw it a little bit later. I actually saw New Moon first with my friend Chris, and I got into the movies, and I like vampires. It doesn't matter how different they all are. I like vampires, so I got into the movies. I've got a lot of I have shirts and stuff, but Edward is my favorite, so yeah, King Edward. Oh, I kind of always wanted to find the one of him in his tux from The Wedding and Breaking Dawn Part 1, but this works too. So, yes. So down here I have the 4 books in the Twilight saga. I have New Moon, Eclipse, Breaking Dawn, and this is the 10th anniversary edition of Twilight that came with Life and Death, which is a gender swap version of the first story where the vampire is female and Bella is a guy. So this is that edition where it's Twilight in the first half, and then the second half is Life and Death upside down. So I took off the jacket to keep it from getting torn up. So, and I kind of like it actually like this. So yes, I like Twilight. I've read the books, and all of them look exactly the same except for my edition of New Moon that I picked up was from when the movie came out. So I actually had the original version of Twilight, but then when the 10th anniversary one came out with Life and Death, I bought it so I could have that. But now they have it where it's separate from Twilight, but I already have it, so go ahead and keep it that way. So the rest of them look exactly like the first editions, and since I have Twilight, it would probably only be fitting that I have the 50 Shades trilogy. I have all 3 books. I have only actually gotten through the first half of 50 Shades of Grey. I have not read the books yet. I have all 3 movies, but I've only watched the first 2. And the reason I got into it, well, everybody knows that it's based off fan fiction, which is based off of Twilight, and then got turned into an actual published series. I started reading it because my friend Amy, I love you, Amy. She got into reading these books. Not exactly sure how she got into wanting to read them, but she read them and she was like, "Courtney, these are really good books. Oh my god, they are like so sexy. You should read them." And I was like, "Okay, I guess I'll give them a shot." And you know, I heard like all the backlash and all the negative stuff about it, and I guess maybe some of it got into my head, but also just when I started reading it, it's like I'm not sure whether I'm really getting into this or finding it, you know, as sexy as other people say, but it's obviously done its job. It got turned into movies and women read them, but I don't know. I've only gotten through half of the first book, so I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure if I'll ever get through the other 2 books in these. I'm not sure, but if you have Twilight, I guess you should probably have, you know, 50 Shades of Grey is kind of like a companion piece to it. But I don't know. If anybody has read them and can tell me positives about them, since all I ever hear is the negative, you can tell me some positives about the book, I would really appreciate it, because like I said, I've only ever gotten through half of the first book, so, but I've seen the first 2 movies, so I kind of know what happens. So another collection that I have on this shelf is let me move my little desk over here so I don't have to hold them. This is a trilogy of books written by author Frank Fedor, and the first one in them is called The Looking Glass Wars. So it is a take on Alice in Wonderland, where it's kind of more of like kind of a, you know, steampunk kind of different retelling of it. You know, it's just you know, it's way out there. So but I believe that I got this at, I want to say, Walden Books before they closed their doors. It's a book that is originally, let's see, where is it on my jacket? Maybe it has a price on here. It was originally $17.99. I got it for $4.97. So I don't know if it was on sale or it was on sale because Walden Books was closing, but again, sometimes I don't want to take the stickers off because I'm afraid it'll leave residue on it, or it might, I don't know. I just don't want to get all over the book jacket. But, so it's a trilogy series, so it's based on Alice in Wonderland, but it's more kind of like high-tech, steampunk, blown-out fantasy. And the next book is called Seeing Red, obviously about the Red Queen. So, and the third and final book is called Arch Enemy. It's the last one in the series. So, I'll admit something. I haven't read them yet, because again, as I stated in my last video, if I sit down and read a book and nobody bothers me, I can finish it in like a few hours. So I'm afraid that I will finish them too fast. But I do like fantasy books that take fairy tales and children's stories and try to revamp them for like an older audience. This was in like the teen fiction section or the young adult section. It depends which bookstore you go to, how they have them labeled. But so, of course, it's for a more teenage audience. And, you know, I'm certainly not a teenager anymore, but I like books that take fairy tales and children's stories and, you know, update them and, you know, give them more adult themes, or just totally transport them to, like, something different. It's already fantasy, but take it to, like high fantasy, or, like I said, steampunk kind of fantasy, or, you know, more like action, kind of sci-fi, almost like Star Wars, or Dune, or stuff like that, just to take it to a different world and a different place. It's enjoyable, and that way, you know, when, you know, your children get older and they're too old for fairy tales, you can, you know, show them these books and allow them to read them. And, you know, if they don't have a lot of graphic violence or a lot of sex in them when they, you know, become teenagers, they can read it. And if it's not suitable for that, when they get a little bit older, maybe they'll enjoy them then. I mean, I enjoy them, and like I said, I'm not a teen, and I'm not a young adult. I'm, 36 years old, but, that's the kind of stuff I like. I like horror, and I like romance, and I like fantasy, and, put them, in different worlds. It's interesting to see how different authors can do that. But, this is the entire trilogy set of the Looking Glass Wars. So, if anybody has read these and you have any comments, feel free to share them in the bottom of my video. And because it just made it look really interesting when I grabbed the book. I'm just afraid I'll read it too fast. That's another thing. I mean, you can read books and go back and read the same ones, especially ones that you end up enjoying and liking, and, read them over and over and over again until, the cover's coming off and pages are falling out. I've done that with a couple of books, and, the thinner the book, the faster I can get done. But if I really like the story, I'll go back and read it 15,000 times. And, so, part of me thinks that I just like collecting books, but I do read books. I have books that I have read more than once, but I don't want to finish them too fast. And I guess part of me is afraid I might be disappointed that they're not as good as I thought they would be. And if I, don't enjoy them, I could probably give them away to Goodwill, and somebody who would enjoy them would like them. But I like to be open-minded and try not to just be pigeonholed in liking a certain genre of books. So, if you want to know what kind of books my husband has, he mostly has books by people that deal with sports. He's got books by Drew McGarry, 2 of them, one by Woody Page and one by Tim Kalishaw. They appear on a lot of ESPN shows, Around the Horn and stuff like that, and talk about sports. He has a book about Mike Ditka, who coached the Chicago Bears. So when my husband was really little, he liked the Chicago Bears. And he also has a book here about Bill Walsh on football and the making of the 49ers. So, and my husband also has a coffee table book up here, Playing with Power, Nintendo Classic NES games. And the autobiography of Bruce Dickinson, lead singer of Iron Maiden. That book is called What Does This Button Do? And I've actually seen my husband read that book twice. So, he also has these books here. They're marked science fiction, and I believe it's a trilogy. The Blood of Kerensky by Michael A. Stackpole, and he says it's about one of his games that he plays. So I don't know anything about it, but I know my husband got them, so he reads them. And there's 3 volumes, Lethal Heritage, Blood Legacy, and Lost Destiny. So it says they're science fiction books, so I think that's probably the closest my husband will ever get to reading something sci-fi. Oh, it's a Battletech novel, it says down at the bottom. So, me, blank, don't know anything about it. I do know about Nintendo games, though, so that's a plus. So I'm not completely in the dark. Alright, and this last series that I have down here taking up my shelf. Let me get my books up here so I need to grab them. They're not completely in order because, as you can tell by the size of the stack, I have hardback copies, bigger slightly bigger paperback copies, and then of course like standard paperback size. These 4 up here are from Kingswell. So they're Kingswell paperbacks. These 4 down here are Kingswell hardbacks. And these 2 down here that are different size are from Titan Books. And this is the Nikki Heat series written by Richard Castle. So on ABC they had the show Castle starring Nathan Fillion, and where he played author Richard Castle, who gets into a slump after he kills off his biggest character that he's created a novel for, spy Derek Storm. So inspiration walks through the door as Detective Kate Beckett. So Richard Castle gets taken with her and kind of follows her around, shadowing her on a case, which the first episode of the show is entitled Flowers for Your Grave, I think is what it's called. And the murders taking place are all based on Richard Castle's books. So, and it turns out Kate's a big Richard Castle fan, because she brings in her own book collection to help them go through the case. When the case is over, Beckett thinks Castle's going to be gone, because in the beginning, Castle is a really big jerk, and he's got a very high opinion of himself and everything, but something about Kate Beckett draws him, and he decides to create a new character and base a book on her in this character that he calls Nikki Heat. And of course, Beckett's not happy with the name Nikki Heat because she thinks it sounds like a stripper, but I guess Castle comes up with it so that he can use it to title his books, because the first book that he puts out is called Heat Wave, and then every book afterward has the word heat somewhere in the title. So then the characters in his books are based around the other detectives at the NYPD. Beckett's collaborating partners, detectives Ryan and Esposito, Lainey Parrish, who is the coroner medical examiner, and their Captain Roy Montgomery, and Castle even kind of creates a character based on himself named Jameson Rook. I like how he created that Rook Castle pieces on a chessboard. Some people say that they came up with the name Richard Castle as kind of like a Stephen King thing, because Stephen King wrote underneath Richard Bachman, and then of course King is a piece on a chessboard, like the castle and the rook. So that's excellent there. Good work. But there are 10 books in this series, and I thought after Castle went off the air that they probably wouldn't put out any more Nikki Heat books because the show was over. I think the first one, Heat Wave, coincides. He starts writing around the first, but I think gets released around the second season. But I think the first season didn't have very many episodes, in case, they didn't want to pick it up after the first season. So they aren't in any particular order, because I have the bigger books first, but sorry. So I'm actually not sure exactly how the books go. I know the newest one is Crashing Heat, and before that was Heat Storm, which puts Nikki Heat with Derek Storm. Now I'm not sure if in this, because I haven't read it yet. Again, I haven't read the books yet. I just wanted to buy them around the time Castle came out, since they were going to put these books out. And of course, they're not actually written by Richard Castle. He's not real. They're not written by Nathan Fillion. I found out the name of the author one time, and I forgot to write it down. But he has written these books. But in a backward order, Crashing Heat, Heat Storm. Like I said, I'm not sure if this is before he killed off Derek Storm, or if he brought Derek Storm back from the dead, or he just faked his death. I haven't read it yet, so, because I never really got into, like, mystery or crime stories. So, again, not sure. I'm afraid that if I started to read them, I might not like them. But, you know, Castle's one of my favorite shows, so I figured I would give it a chance. And then, before that was High Heat and Driving Heat. And, of course, Heat Wave was the first one. The other books in the series are Heat Rises and Naked Heat. I think Naked Heat was the second one after Heat Wave. Frozen Heat, Deadly Heat, and Raging Heat. So only the first book and Heat Storm use heat as the first word. Heat is the second word in the title of all the following books. And then, of course, I do know as the stories progress, because the way it progressed in the show, eventually, spoilers, Beckett and Castle end up together as a couple. In the beginning, it's kind of sexual tension that's, you know, unrequited, and then they become a couple, and then they get married. And that's kind of how it goes in the books, too, between Nikki Heat and Jameson Rook. All this, you know, belligerent sexual tension builds up, and then they're eventually married. So, but there are 10 books in the series. Crashing Heat's a little thinner than these other 3 hardback books, so I'm not really sure exactly how long they all run, but I have so far the entire collection, so like I said, I haven't read them, so I'm not sure if there will be any more books in the Nikki Heat series, but I always try to keep tabs on Amazon to see if they'll let me know when a book by an author that I like is coming out. So, who knows, Crashing Heat could be the last book in the Nikki Heat series, or there could be more to come. I mean, like I said, I thought when the show was over, they wouldn't put out any more Nikki Heat books. So, but maybe they still put them out so that people can go out and buy Castle on DVD, which, by the way, I have all 8 seasons of the show on DVD. There's not like any show of mine that I haven't seen 15,000 times on reruns of TV that I don't have on DVD. But that's my Richard Castle Nikki Heat series. I still like how they have like New York Times best-selling author Richard Castle. And they still have Richard Castle's face on the back of the books, which is Nathan Fillion's face. It's just so interesting about that. Because, you know, I've checked these from like, you know, cover to cover. And of course, it is copyrighted by ABC Studios because they own the rights to Castle, since it appeared on their network. But, you know, I've always actually even looked through these from, like, cover to cover to see if, like, you know, they'll give me, like, some little slip about who wrote it, but they've kept it pretty close to the vest. But, it does have in here the order into, which the, books go, I believe. Heat Wave, Naked Heat, Heat Rises, Frozen Heat, Deadly Heat, Raging Heat, Driving Heat, High Heat, Heat Storm, Crashing Heat. There are also books available for his character Derek Storm. There is Storm Front, there is Wild Storm, and there are 3 books: a Brewing Storm, a Raging Storm, a Bloody Storm. So, and I believe there's actually a graphic novel too of Stormfront, one of the Derek Storm novels. So I kind of bought it mostly because I know Nikki Heat's based on, you know, Beckett, and, you know, I like my little ships. So yeah, I'm definitely a Castle Beckett, a casket shipper, if you will. So, like I said, I've never read like crime or mystery, so I'm not sure if I'd like it. And I guess my husband would be kind of mad if he thought that I bought these books and wasn't ever going to read them. It's not that I won't ever read them, it's just like, I'm afraid if I start reading them, I'll go through them too fast, or I won't like them. And, But still, it's interesting. Another thing that's interesting, they always had the characters talk about other books that Richard Castle wrote. Like I said, Flowers for Your Grave was one that he wrote, and then there was one that was like Death of a Prom Queen, a book that had something to do with voodoo. There was a book called A Rose Forever After that he wrote about, wrote and dedicated to a girl that he used to go out with. They had like all these books that they talked about, and they even had like copies of the books printed out, but they don't have any of those actual books out. They just have his Nikki Heat books. I always thought it would be interesting if they took all those other Richard Castle novels that he wrote before his Derek Storm novels and put them out. Because I think they actually had a website that like promoted those books, and they had like little descriptions about them, and I think I read through some of them, and it's like, these would be actual good books. So Mr. Castle Ghostwriter, would you like pen those books? Because I would be interested in reading them. So again, anybody who has read these Nikki Heat Richard Castle novels, if you have any comments about the books, again, feel free to share them. I mean, I'm just a normal person who likes books. I'm writing my own books. I like to hear people talk about books. So if you have any questions or comments about the books that I've talked about, even my husband's books, just feel free to pop them down there in the comments, and I would love to answer them. I'd love to get any kind of feedback on books that I haven't read yet that I want to read. And I guess that will wrap up this episode of the Book Nook. So following videos will be about books that are not on my shelves. I will bring them in from my room to this little book nook, and I will talk about them. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to go through my collections of books that I have by either series or author, and give a little talk about those. And so thank you if you came back. If this is your first time seeing my videos, I have other videos to check out. Again, like my reading, I read different types of books, so I also do different things here on YouTube. I've talked about movies, and I've talked about books, and I've talked about, books that I like, my own books. I made like anime music videos in the past. So again, if maybe there's a video you would like me to talk about some other movies that I like, because I've mostly been talking about movies for Halloween, horror and Halloween appropriate family films. But if there is anything you would like to know about me, I could do a Q&A video. There's just anything you can ask me. I am Courtney Gruenhold, and I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time.